Hi, I am Sarangdar and this is the task demonstration video of task 6.1 PC. So let's start with the map.cs file. Here we map the namespace robot controller API indicates that the map class belongs to the namespace. Then we define the many properties in map class like ID represents the unique identifier, rows indicates the row column, and name identifies the name of the map, and created stores the date and time when the map was created. Modified date stores the date and time when the map was modified. And then we make the constructor initialize a map object with the provided parameters like id, rows, columns, name, create data, modified data, etc. Next is the robot command.cs. This is same as the map.cs file. We make the namespace robot controller API indicates that the robot command class belongs to this namespace. Then we make the many properties in this class robot command class. ID represents unique identifier, name holds the name of the command, is move command indicates whether the command is a move command or not. Its boolean property create date stores the date and time when the command was created. Modified date stores the date and time when the command was last modified. Description provides an optional description for the command. It's nullable, allowing it to be assigning a null value. Next, we make the constructor semi-initialize robot command object with provided parameters like id, name, is move command, create date, modified date, and description. Next is the user.cs. This file is also same as the maps and robot command. So namespace indicates that the user class belongs to the namespace robot command controller API, and here also make the many properties in the user class like id, email, first name that stores the first name of the user, last name stores the last name of the user, password hash stores the hash password of the user, description that is nullable, allowing to be assigned a null value, and role represents the role of the user, it's nullable, allowing it to be assigned a null value. Then create date, modified date. Here we also make the constructor that initialize a user object with the provided parameters like id, email, first name, last name, password hash, description, role, created date, and modified date. So let's come to the next part, that is program.cs file. In this file we created a namespace. This imports the firstly we'll import the necessary namespaces such as system.reflection, role, robot controller API.persistence, Microsoft, and all. Then web application builder creation. The web application builder creation method is used to create an instance of the web application builder. Service registration, add controllers, register controllers for handling http request, add scope password user, password hasher user registers, I password hasher user service with password hasher user implementation used for the hashing user passwords, add authentication, add authentication option, basic authentication, register authentication service custom with a custom basic authentication scheme named basic authentication, add scheme authentication scheme options, basic authentication handler. This registers the basic authentication handler to handle the basic authentication scheme. Add authentication options. This configures authorization policies. Two policies are added. Admin only, that requires the admin role claim. User only requires either admin or user role claim. Application building, that is build the application. Middleware configuration, use authentication, add authentication middleware to request pipeline, use authorization, adds authorization middleware to request pipeline. Next is the use https redirection, redirects http request to https. Next is the routing, map controls, maps controller routes, and application execution, that is executes the application. That is the login.cs file. Uh, this login class represents the credentials provided by user for authentication in the robot controller API. The namespace the class is defined within the robot controller API namespace. And here are some properties like email represents the email address entered by the user for login authentication, and password represents the password entered by the user for login authentication. These properties allow capturing the user's email and password when the attempt to log in the system. And typically these credentials are used to authenticate the user against the database. Let's come to the next part, that is map data access.cs. This class provides method to interact with the database for managing maps in the robot controller. uh, Namespace the class is defined within the robot controller API dot persistence. Connecting string. Connecting string, this class contains a constant connecting connection string representing the connection string to the PostgreSQL database. There you will see the methods. Get robot map retrieves all robot maps from the database. Get robot map square retrieves only square roots of the database. Retrieves only square root maps of rows equal to the number of columns from the database. Get map by ID retrieves a map by its ID from the database. Post map adds a new map to the database. Update map updates an existing map to the database. Delete map. Delete a map from the database based on its ID. Is map index valid? Checks if the provided coordinate x, y are within the valid index range of the map. Specify by its the ID. Database interaction. The class uses npg-SQL to establish a connection to the PostgreSQL database. SQL commands are executed to perform CRUD, create, or read, update, delete operation on the map table in the database. The methods handle parameterized queries to ensure security and prevent SQL injection attacks. Data is received from the database using npg-SQL data reader and mapped to the map class properties. Overall, this class encapsulates the data access logic from managing maps in the robot controller API, providing methods to fetch, add, update, and delete maps from the underlying database. Adding it includes a method validate map, indicates and ensure data integrity. The robot command data access class provides methods to interact with the database for managing robot commands in the robot controller API. Namespace. The class is defined within the robot controller API.persistence namespace. Connecting string. The class contains a constant connecting string. Present the connection string to the PostgreSQL database. Methods. Get robot commands retrieves all robot commands from the database. Get move command retrieves all move command from the database. Insert robot command adds a new robot command in the database. Get robot command by int id retrieves a robot command by id from the database. User update robot command in id robot command update command updates an existing robot command in the database. Delete robot command in id deletes a robot command from the database based on its id. Database interaction. Database interaction. The class uses npsql to establish a connection in the PostgreSQL database. SQL commands are executed to perform CRUD, create, read, update, delete operation on the robot command table in the database. The methods handle parameterized queries to ensure security and prevent SQL injection attacks. Data is retrieved from the database using npg-SQL data return and mapped to the robot command class properties. Overall, this class encapsulates the data access logic for the managing robot command in the robot controller API. Next is the user data access.cs. User data access.cs. The user data access class provides methods to interact with the database for managing user data in the robot controller API. This class is defined within the robot controller API.persistent namespace. The class contains a constant connecting string representing the connection string to the PostgreSQL database. Get all users retrieves all you get all users from the database. Get user by id int id retrieves a user by its id from the database. Get user by email string email retrieves a user by email from the database. Insert user adds a new user to the database. Update user updates an existing user in the database. Deletes a user from the database based on its id. This class uses NPG SQL to establish a connection in the PostgreSQL database. SQL commands are executed to perform CRUD, create, read, update, and delete operation on the user table in the database. The method handle parameterized queries to ensure security and prevent SQL injection attacks. Data is retrieved from the database using NPG SQL data reader and mapped to the user class properties. Uh, Next is the controller map controller.cs. In this file, firstly the class is defined within the robot controller api.cs. API controller indicates that the class is an API controller. Root API maps specifies the base route for the all endpoint in the controller. Get maps array http get endpoint to fetch all maps. Get map square http get endpoint to fetch square maps. Get map by id int id fetch a map by its id. Post map http post endpoint to add a new map. Put map int id map http put endpoint to update a map. Delete map http delete endpoint to delete a map. Get map int id int x int y http get endpoint to check if a map index is valid. Authorization attribute is applied to specific endpoint to enforce access control policies. For example, admin only policy restricts the access to administrator, and user only policy allows access to both administrator and regular users. Error handling. The endpoints include error handling logic to handle cases where required parameter are missing or valid. The endpoints utilize methods from the data access class to interact with the database for CRUD operation on maps. Data is returned to clients in the form of IX and result, a response allowing for appropriate HTTP status code and response message. Next is also the controller file for the robot commands. Let's dive into it. Uh, The robot command controller class is responsible for managing robot commands in the API. The class is defined within the robot controller API controller namespace. API controller indicates that the class is an API controller. Root API slash robot commands specifies the base route for the all endpoints like get all robot commands. HTTP get endpoint to fetch all robot commands. It is restricted to user with the user only policies. Get move commands http get endpoint to fetch move commands. It is restricted to administrator with the admin only policy. Get command by id http get endpoint to fetch a command by id restricted to the administrator admin only policy. Add robot command http post endpoint to add a new command. It is restricted to administrator with the admin only. Next is the update robot command http put endpoint to update a command by its id. It is restricted to admin only. Delete robot command It is endpoint to delete a command by its ID. It's restricted to administrator with the admin only policy. Authorization. Authorized attribute is applied to specific endpoint to enforce access control policies. For example, admin only policy restricts access to administrators, and user only policy allow access to both administrator and regular users. These endpoints include error handling logic to handle cases where required parameter are missing or valid. The endpoint utilize method from the robot command data access class to interact with the database for CRUD operation on robot commands. Data is returned to client in the form of IX and result responses, allowing for appropriate HTTP status code and response message. Next is the user controller CS. This class handles user related operation in the API. The class is defined within the robot controller API controller namespace. Uh, API controller indicates that the class is an API controller. Its root for the all endpoint is in this controller is API slash users. The constructor injects an instance of the iPassword hasher user to hash user password security. And the endpoints like get user, HTTP get endpoint to fetch all users, get user by ID, HTTP get endpoints to fetch user by their ID, create user, HTTP post endpoint to add a new user, update user, HTTP put endpoint to update a new user, delete user, HTTP delete endpoint to delete a user by their ID, update user email and password ID login, HTTP patch endpoint to update a user's email and password. Here attributes is applied to specific endpoint to enforce access control policies. For example, admin only policy restricts access to administrators, and user only policy allows access to both administrators and the regular users. The endpoint includes error handling logic to handle cases where required parameters are missing or invalid. The create user and the update user email and password endpoints has the user's password security using the injection iPassword hasher user instance before storing it in the database. The endpoint utilize methods from the user data access class to interact with the database for CRUD operation on users. So let's come to the last part of its code, basic authentication handler. So the basic authentication handler class is responsible for handling basic authentication in the API. This class is defined within the robot controller API authentication namespace. It inherits from authentication handler authentication schema options, which is the base class from handling authentication schemes in ASP.NET Core. Next is the constructor. The constructor injects dependencies required for authentication handling. I options monitor authentication scheme options used to access the option for the authentication scheme. iLogger factory used for logging. URL encoder used for URL encoding. iSystem clock provides access to system clock. Additionally, it initializes an instance of the iPassword hasher to securely hash user password. Authentication handling. The class is responsible for implementing the logic to authenticate users based on the basic authentication credentials, username, and password. It overrides the handle authenticate async method to perform authentication within this method. It extracts the username and password from the request headers, retrieves the user from the database, and based on the username and verifies the password using the injection iPassword hasher instance. Password hashing. The class utilizes an instance of iPassword hasher user to securely hash password during authentication. And next is the logging. It can log authentication related events using the injection iLogger factory. Next is this method is like the protected override task authentication, result handler authentication. This method handle authentication async is an overridden method from the base class authentication handler authentication scheme options. It handles the authentication process to incoming request. www hyphen authenticate header. It adds a www authenticate. Wait a second. It adds a www authenticate header to the response, indicating that the basic authentication is required for accessing the resources. The realm parameter specifies the protection space where the credentials apply. Authorization header retrieval. It retrieves the value of authorization header from the incoming request. This header typically contains the credentials provided by the client for authentication. Authorization header validation. It checks whether the authorization header is empty or does not start with the expected basic prefix. If either condition is true, it means that no credentials are provided. Credentials are not in expected format. In such cases, it returns an authenticate result dot fail, indicating that no credentials are provided. Next is the credentials extraction. It extracts the it extracts the base64 encoded credentials from the authorization header, and by removing the basic prefix and trimming any leading or trailing white spaces. And base64 decoding, it decodes the base64 string to retrieve the email and password in plain text. It splits the decoded credentials by the separate the email and password. It retrieves the user from the database using the email obtained from the credentials. If the user is not found, if the user is not found in the database, or if the hashed password stored in the database does not match in the provided password after hashing, it returns an authenticate result failed, indicating that uh, the authentication failed. This part of the code essentially validates the user's credential against those stored in the database and ensures that the authentication process fails if the credentials are valid. So else if the line checks if the hashed password stored in the database matches the provided password after hashing. If the verification succeeds, it proceeds to build the claims and issue an authentication ticket. Next, where claims is equal to new. This section constructs an array of claims representing information about the authentication user. And in this case it includes the user's full name and role. This line creates a array and specify the authentication scheme as basic, then a claims principal object in the constructed using it the created identity. Where ticket is equal to new authentication ticket principal scheme dot name. This line creates an authentication ticket object containing the principal with the claims and the name of the authentication scheme. Next is return task dot from result authenticate result dot successful ticket. This line returns an authenticate result dot success, indicating successful authentication along with the authentication ticket. And the else response or status code is equal to 401. This section handles the scenario where the password verification fails or the user is not found in the database. It sets the http status code to 401 unauthorized and returns an authenticate result dot fail, indicating authorization failure. Next is the catch exception x. This line starts a catch block which catches any exception that occurs within the try block. And the logger.log error x, this section logs the exception that occurred during the authentication using a logger. It records the exception details along with custom error message, then return task dot from result authenticate result dot fail. This line returns an authenticated result failed, indicating that authentication failed due to an internet server error. This was the code explanation. Next we will see how it is working on the postman, and we will see the database. So let's see how it is working on the postman. Firstly we will run the code. It's building. Then we will go to the postman. We will copy this link http localhost 5079, and I will come to the postman. Then I will paste my localhost here, and I will go with the API user or users, I'm not sure, let me check. API users. So you can see here I have two users, sarangdar012 and sarangdar023. Next command is HTTP get ID. Okay, so if I put ID number 1, then sarangdar012 come in. I put ID number 2, then sarangdar023 will come. Next is the post ID. Okay, so for posting the ID I need to copy this all credentials. I will put it here, and what I will do is I will change these things. Sarangdar023, Sarangdar034, and Sarangdar Chaudhary role user. Okay, so for posting I will have to go to the post. Now I can post this. So it is showing some error, so I will check this error. So I will post it again. You can see my new, this is ready, command is ready. So I will normally get it. You can see here is new ID tag is 9 because I have deleted so many IDs between 2 and 9, that's why its ID is 9. So I proved it works. So next is to use the put command. Put command means updation. What I want to update, actually I can update ID number 9, and firstly I also show you the database. What's changed in database? You can see here now I have three emails, sarangdar 012, 023 and 034, and then I want to update ID number 9, where I will update my role user to admin. Let's see. I will change my role from user to admin, and I will change my name Sarangdar Chaudhary to Sarangdar Savarna. and nothing else. Okay, so I send it. Let's see it works or not. Firstly, I will check in the database. I come to the database, go to the script, select script. After that, execute script. There I can see my last name is changed from Chaudhary to Savarna, and my role is also changed from user to admin. It means it is working. So let's come to the next part, that API maps. API slash maps. So I have to get all the maps from here. You can see all the maps are here, 4, 5, 6. And then I would like to get square maps. Also are square maps, so it will come. So next I want to get the ID number 6. It is also working well. Then I would like to go in the ID 6 and dimension 45 and 56 slash 56. So I think it is getting some problem. It's not showing the result in the maps. Let's check it again. 403 forbidden. Let's come to the next command, that is API maps post. For posting, first I will have to get, I get the command. I will copy all the credentials, then I can post new command in its body. I will simply put this here, and no needs of ID because it will automatically assign to it. There is no needs of create date and modify date because that will also automatically will there. So I will change the map name from map 4 to only map, and it's column 4270, description 4 to description. So new command is created. I will check it from the get command. So I will post the new command here. So you can see new command is posted, and I will get it from here. So next command is the put command. So I will choose the ID 6 and apply the put command here, and I will change its name from map 6 to map. Let's see it's updating or not. Yes, it's updated. So I would like to check it on database. I'll go to the script, and I will execute this one. Yes, you can see here map 6 is changed the map. It is also working. Same work with the robot commands. I will show you. ps robot hyphen commands. Firstly, I will get the all command from this command. You can see all commands are here, 3 4 5 6 7. Then command number 4, command number 6. Actually, I think I am working on the wrong. Yes, I am working on the wrong because it's user only. So I would like to change this from user only to admin only. Now, you can see it shows the ID number 6. Then I would like to see all the move commands. Can see all the move commands. Then I would like to show you a post command. I mean, I want to add a new command. We can give it name from proper to, what can I give the name? Postman. Postman. Okay, ID doesn't matter, so I will delete this. And let's see. I'll post this command. So I posted this command, and now I can get it from here, and I can show you it on pgadmin 2. You can see I have a new command, that is ID number 16, because I have used and deleted many IDs between 7 and 16. And I will show you it on pgadmin. Let's come to the robot command, go to the script, select a script, and do this. You can see here is the different command, that is postman. So now let's show you how to update. I want to use put command on 16th ID. So I will copy this all easily. Copy, control A, control V, and I will give here the put command. Then I will change its name from postman to post, and I will change this zigzag to sarang. Now let's see it is working or not. Yes, it's updated successfully. You can see it from here. 16th number ID, post and sarang uh, updated successfully. I can show you here in database too. Select a script, execute. You can see here from postman to post and from zigzag to sarang. It's when it's working properly. That's it for today's video. Thank you for watching.